The 1 out of 10,000 moviegoers.
Oh, I can name to you Lubitsch and Fleming and Van Dyke and La Cava.
You didn't think I was dead, too, did you?
Old Hollywood loved glamour, but behind the gowns and flashing lights was a different kind of story. Some actresses weren't just stars on the screen, they were unstoppable forces off it. They lit up gossip columns with whirlwind romances, stolen hearts, and love lives that seemed bigger than the films they starred in.
Oh, you're a little stenographer.
Yes, I'm a little stenographer.
That's fascinating. I don't suppose you'd take some dictation from me sometime, would you?
So, how much do you really know about these legends? Get ready, because the truth is more dazzling than you think. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead wasn't a rule breaker. She was the rule destroyer. Born into privilege, she could have chosen a polished, safe life. But Tallulah craved chaos, and Hollywood became her playground. With her raspy voice, larger-than-life personality, and refusal to play demure, she was the kind of actress who thrived on shocking everyone in the room. From the 1920s into the 40s, Bankhead became notorious not just for her theater triumphs, but also for her wild nights. She loved company, and the stories of her flings became almost as legendary as her stage roles. Studio executives whispered about her, party guests repeated her outrageous one-liners, and fans couldn't get enough of the gossip. One famous dinner guest recalled her bluntly declaring she hadn't had a sober day since she was 14. She wasn't hiding behind any Hollywood mask. She was leaning in, turning excess into her trademark. Bankhead once joked that her three loves were smoking, drinking, and men. People laughed, but she wasn't kidding. She thrived on energy, attention, and the kind of drama others ran from. At parties, she could outdrink anyone, dance until dawn, and still leave the biggest impression in the room. Her honesty was her edge. While other actresses worked tirelessly to project innocence, Tallulah made sure you remembered her as the woman who lived without shame. By the time her screen career slowed, Bankhead had already secured her place in Hollywood legend. She was unpredictable, bold, and utterly magnetic. If she couldn't dominate the box office, she knew she could dominate the gossip columns, and she did exactly that. Tallulah Bankhead didn't just survive Hollywood, she made it chase after her. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner was the kind of actress who could stop a room with one look. Tall, sultry, and impossibly self-assured, she walked into Hollywood from a small town in North Carolina and quickly became a sensation. But it wasn't only her films that made headlines. Ava's personal life became just as gripping as anything playing on the big screen. Her marriages alone were pure column gold. She wed Mickey Rooney, who couldn't resist bragging a little too much about their private life. Next came bandleader Artie Shaw, who expected her to behave like a quiet housewife, something Ava was never willing to be. Then came Frank Sinatra, her greatest love and most public heartbreak. Their romance was fiery, stormy, and passionate enough to make every newspaper. They fought, reconciled, and circled back to each other countless times, keeping the press on high alert. And those were just the marriages. Beyond Sinatra, Ava was linked to Howard Hughes, who courted her with lavish gifts that she often brushed aside, and even Clark Gable, one of the kings of the screen. She spent time in Spain, mingling with bullfighters, adventurers, and artists, leaving a trail of stories behind her wherever she went. Ava wasn't careful with her heart, but she never pretended to be. What made her unforgettable was her defiance. MGM Studios tried to rein in her wild reputation, but Ava simply laughed. Contracts could control her films, but no one could control her life. She once admitted she wasn't the greatest actress, but audiences didn't care. They were spellbound. When people remember Ava Gardner, they don't just think of her beauty or elegance. They remember a woman who lived on her own terms, chasing love, adventure, and intensity without ever apologizing. She wasn't just an under-9 actress, she was a whirlwind. Lana Turner. Lana Turner became a Hollywood goddess at just 16 when she was discovered at a soda fountain. She was labeled the Sweater Girl, a nickname that followed her for life. But Lana's fame wasn't built on charm alone. Her love life became one of the most dramatic sagas in Hollywood history. She was married 8 times, making her name a constant fixture in the tabloids. From band leaders to actors to high society men, Lana seemed to live in a cycle of romance, heartbreak, and new beginnings. She had flings with stars like Tyrone Power and musicians who kept the gossip writers endlessly busy. But one relationship in particular became infamous. That was her involvement with Johnny Stompanato, a known figure in Los Angeles nightlife. Their relationship was toxic and violent, often played out in public spats that shocked audiences. The story turned darker when one of their clashes ended with Lana's teenage daughter stepping in to protect her mother. The incident became front-page news across the country and could have easily ended Lana's career. But Turner didn't fade away. Just as the press thought she was finished, she returned with Imitation of Life in 1959, one of the most successful films of her career. She proved that even the harshest headlines couldn't bury her talent. Lana's story is one of survival in the spotlight. She stumbled often, fell for the wrong men, and endured heartbreaks that could have broken anyone else. Yet she always re-emerged, glamorous and unbowed. If Hollywood wanted her to disappear, she showed up brighter. Lana Turner wasn't just the sweater girl, she was the survivor who turned chaos into resilience. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor didn't just act in Hollywood, she ruled it. With violet eyes that seemed to pull audiences into another world, she was born to be a star. But what made her a legend wasn't only her Oscar-winning performances. It was her love life, which became a saga worthy of its own epic film. Taylor married 8 times, often making the front page more than the film page. Her unions included hotel heir Conrad Hilton, actor Eddie Fisher, and of course, the great Richard Burton, twice. But the headlines were never just about the ceremonies. They were about the drama that surrounded them. One of her most famous stories was the love triangle with Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. Debbie was America's sweetheart at the time, and when Taylor won Fisher's heart, it sparked one of the biggest feuds of the era. Then came Richard Burton, a romance so fiery it practically burned through the cameras on the set of Cleopatra. The Vatican even issued a statement condemning her, calling her a symbol of immorality. For most stars, that would have been career-ending. For Elizabeth, it only cemented her legend. Taylor wasn't shy about her passions. She loved intensely, fought fiercely, and lived loudly. Studio executives tried to polish her image into something softer, but Elizabeth shattered every mold. She draped herself in diamonds, laughed off diets, and showed up unfiltered. What made her special was her refusal to apologize. While others tried to keep their reputations clean, Elizabeth Taylor let her romances become part of her mythology. The world couldn't look away. She wasn't just an actress. She was a storm of glamour, passion, and boldness, and she carried it all with undeniable power. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford's journey is the definition of reinvention. She began as a chorus girl, determined to climb to the very top of Hollywood. And climb she did, but not without whispers following her every step. Crawford was fiercely ambitious, and that drive extended far beyond her work. Rumors swirled of countless affairs with leading men, including a long-speculated connection with Clark Gable. Their on-screen chemistry only fueled the gossip. Insiders claimed she charmed producers, journalists, and even fellow actresses, sparking speculation that she used her magnetism as much as her talent to stay on top. Unlike many of her peers, Joan didn't shy away from the talk. When rivals accused her of being too scandalous, she leaned in. She knew that as long as people were whispering, she was winning. Married 4 times, her union with Pepsi executive Alfred Steele even secured her business empire, proving she was more than just a performer. Her rivalry with Bette Davis became legendary, fanned by studio publicity and their own personal grudges. Whether it was who got the better roles or who looked more radiant at premieres, their feud kept Hollywood buzzing for decades. Joan understood the value of gossip as currency and spent it wisely. Even as younger stars threatened to eclipse her, Crawford roared back with powerhouse performances like Mildred Pierce, earning herself an Academy Award. Her name became synonymous with endurance. Joan Crawford may have been accused of chasing power through love affairs, but she outlasted almost all her rivals. She played Hollywood's game better than anyone, bending the rules until they worked in her favor. Love her or question her, you couldn't ignore her. She made sure of that. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe wasn't just a movie star. She was the fantasy of an entire era, wrapped in platinum curls and a voice that could melt a microphone. But behind the playful image of the dizzy blonde was a woman who lived at the center of every whisper in Hollywood. Her marriages became national events. She tied the knot with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, whose possessive streak made their short union a constant battle. Then she married playwright Arthur Miller, hoping for stability, but even that relationship cracked under the weight of her fame. Yet it wasn't just her husbands who kept the press buzzing. Rumors flew about her connections to some of the most powerful names in America. Marlon Brando, Frank Sinatra, and yes, the Kennedy brothers, all were linked to Marilyn in the gossip pages. Whether the stories were exaggerated or true didn't matter. The myth of Monroe's love life became bigger than reality itself. Studios tried to cast her as the perfect innocent, but Marilyn flipped the script. She used her charm, leaned into the gossip, and became something more than an actress. She became a legend. She knew how to keep her name alive in the papers, and she did it with a sly smile that suggested she knew more than anyone else in the room. Her story, of course, carries a haunting edge. Marilyn longed for freedom, but the world only wanted her image. Still, she left behind a legacy of allure and mystery that refuses to fade. Marilyn Monroe didn't just belong to Hollywood. She belonged to history, and her name still sparkles every time the lights dim. Mae West. Before Hollywood even knew how to handle outrageous personalities, Mae West had already perfected the art. With her sharp wit, bold curves, and one-liners that audiences still, quote, she wasn't just acting, she was branding herself as the queen of playful rebellion. Mae built her career on double meanings, but she also lived boldly off the stage and screen. She openly spoke about her admirers, joking that she never let a man stay long enough to bore her. While other actresses worked hard to project innocence, Mae flipped the game. She turned desire into business, and every wink or laugh kept her audience hooked. Her off-screen adventures were just as colorful. She surrounded herself with younger admirers, even into her 60s, declaring that charm didn't come with an expiration date. Athletes, musicians, and fellow actors became part of her orbit, but Mae never let any one person define her. She kept control, and that was her genius. Hollywood tried to silence her more than once. Scenes were cut, critics clutched their pearls, and entire films were banned in some places. But every time she tried to stop her, she came back bigger, funnier, and even more daring. She understood that controversy wasn't a career ender. It was fuel. Mae's legend lies not just in her sharp tongue, but in her strategy. She wasn't trapped by Hollywood's rules. She rewrote them. She invited the spotlight, knowing exactly how to use it. Even decades later, her quotes still make people laugh, and her boldness feels ahead of its time. Mae West didn't just survive in Hollywood. She made Hollywood follow her lead. Zsa Zsa Gabor. If the word glamour had a face in the 1950s, it was Zsa Zsa Gabor. Draped in diamonds, wrapped in silk, and always ready with a quip, Zsa Zsa became famous not just for her movies, but for her dazzling lifestyle. She once claimed she had never turned down a proposal, and with 9 marriages on her record. Maybe she wasn't exaggerating, but the husbands were only part of the story. The real fun for the press came from the rumors of endless affairs, from politicians to wealthy tycoons to Hollywood's leading men. Zsa Zsa didn't mind. In fact, she seemed to enjoy every whisper. Her quick wit made her a talk show favorite. When asked about divorce, she famously joked that she was a wonderful housekeeper because she always kept the house after leaving a husband. Audiences roared, and Zsa Zsa leaned into the persona of the unstoppable diva. What set her apart was her ability to turn her life into entertainment. She may not have been the greatest actress, but she was a master at keeping herself relevant. Wherever Zsa Zsa went, cameras followed, and stories trailed right behind. She didn't just sparkle under the spotlight. She carried it with her. Zsa Zsa Gabor proved that fame didn't always come from roles alone. Sometimes it came from living larger than life and making sure everyone knew about it. And that's exactly what she did, with style to spare. Clara Bow. They called her the It Girl, but Clara Bow was more than just a nickname. She was the roaring 20s wrapped into one electrifying package, loud, passionate, and fearless. Clara rose from poverty in Brooklyn to become one of the first true Hollywood icons. Her fiery spirit captivated audiences, but it was her private life that fueled endless chatter. Clara Bow was Hollywood's first real wild child. Stories followed her everywhere. Gossip writers claim she had romances with football players, actors, directors, and even entire film crews during productions. Whether those tales were exaggerated or not didn't matter. Her reputation as Hollywood's free spirit was already sealed. She lived at full speed. On screen, Clara broke the mold of the pure heroine, playing women who were bold and daring. Off screen, she lived the same way. She didn't hide, didn't pretend, and didn't soften her edges. Fans adored her for it, even as critics accused her of being out of control. But Hollywood can be cruel. The same press that praised her energy soon turned on her. Columnists painted her as reckless, studios worried she was too unpredictable, and by the mid-1930s, Clara retired from films altogether. The whirlwind that made her a star also became the reason she left the stage too soon. Yet her legend endures. Clara Bow wasn't just an actress, she was a pioneer who dared to live as loudly as she performed. She may have been judged harshly, but she showed the world that a woman could live boldly in an industry built on restraint. Clara Bow didn't just have it, she had everything. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was once called the most beautiful woman in the world, and Hollywood quickly made her its jewel. With her striking looks, she could have coasted on charm alone. But Hedy's story was far more layered. She married 6 times, each relationship keeping her firmly in the spotlight. Yet her reputation wasn't built on marriages alone. Rumors swirled of her being courted by eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, who showered her with attention and extravagant gifts. She was also linked to actors and producers, with stories painting her as a woman whose allure was impossible to resist. But Hedy wasn't just a glamorous face. She was brilliant. Away from the cameras, she tinkered with inventions and co-created technology that would eventually lead to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Imagine that. While the gossip columns obsessed over her romances, she was quietly reshaping the future of communication. Hollywood, however, loved to focus on the glamour. Studios worried about her bold reputation, but they couldn't deny her magnetism. She lit up the screen in films like Samson and Delilah, while whispers about her personal life kept her name buzzing in the papers. Hedy's greatest legacy is the contradiction she embodied. A genius mind packaged in a starlet's body, constantly underestimated but never forgotten. While the world may have defined her by her admirers, history remembers her for her brilliance. Hedy Lamarr proved that you could be dazzling and brilliant at the same time, and that was her greatest triumph. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's story reads like a Hollywood cautionary tale written in neon. She arrived in Los Angeles with the kind of beauty that could stop traffic, and for a brief moment, it seemed like she might soar to the very top. But Barbara didn't just chase fame. She chased passion, and her choices made her one of the most talked about women of her time. Her career started strong. So when he Thingen again, she appeared in promising films in the early 1950s and seemed destined for leading lady status. But the headlines quickly shifted from her movies to her turbulent love life. The most infamous story was her involvement in a triangle with actors Tom Neal and Franchot Tone. That rivalry turned violent when Neal attacked Tone so badly he was hospitalized. Instead of sympathy, Barbara was painted as the reckless spark at the center of the storm. After that, the gossip never let her go. She was linked with producers, actors, and even men outside the business. Her fiery personality and impulsive decisions kept her name in the papers, but her reputation made studios nervous. The roles dried up, and Barbara's public image became one of chaos rather than glamour. What makes her story haunting is how differently she was treated compared to her male counterparts. Men in Hollywood lived loudly and were celebrated. Barbara lived loudly and was punished. By her 30s, she was struggling. A fallen star remembered more for her scandals than her talent. Barbara Payton's legacy is both tragic and unforgettable. She represents the unforgiving side of Hollywood, a place that adored her beauty but never forgave her for being bold. Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow was the original platinum blonde, the woman who set the standard for every bombshell who came after. With her icy hair and smoldering eyes, she was dubbed the blonde bombshell, and audiences adored her. But her personal life was as fiery as her image suggested. Harlow was linked to a long list of admirers, from co-stars to powerful producers. Rumors followed her everywhere, with whispers that her charm often blurred the line between career opportunities and personal connections. Even Clark Gable, her frequent co-star, was said to be captivated by her. Whether true or exaggerated, the stories only fueled her aura. Her marriages, however, brought just as much drama. She wed 3 times, each ending in heartbreak or tragedy. One of her husbands was found dead in circumstances that sparked endless speculation. The gossip pages couldn't get enough, and Harlow became the symbol of both glamour and danger. On screen, she redefined what a Hollywood star could be. She wasn't just a pretty face. She radiated energy, sass, and a sense of freedom that audiences found irresistible. Off-screen, she leaned into her independence, never apologizing for her choices or her reputation. Tragically, Harlow's life ended at just 26, leaving fans stunned. Yet her short career left an imprint that still echoes through Hollywood. She embodied contradictions, innocence and allure, vulnerability and boldness. Jean Harlow didn't just act in films. She rewrote the rulebook for what a star could be, and in doing so, she became immortal. Linda Darnell. Linda Darnell entered Hollywood looking like the perfect picture of innocence, dark-haired, wide-eyed, and marketed as the good girl. But behind the carefully crafted studio image was a woman who knew how to navigate the system. Whispers followed her from the start. She was linked with directors, married actors, and influential producers. Her reputation grew quickly, with insiders claiming she had more admirers than roles. The tabloids delighted in painting her as restless, never satisfied with one romance for long. Her private life was complicated. She married young, divorced, and fell into a pattern of whirlwind relationships that kept her name alive in the columns. She tried to keep her public image polished, but the gossip writers rarely let her breathe. Each headline pushed her further into the role of Hollywood's restless diva. Still, Linda was no passive star. She proved her acting skills in films like Forever Amber and A Letter to Three Wives. Audiences loved her talent and striking looks, but the weight of rumors began to overshadow her work. By the 1950s, her career was fading, and gossip seemed louder than applause. Her story ended tragically in a house fire at just 41. The tragedy cemented her as one of Hollywood's lost beauties, remembered as much for her personal chaos as for her talent. Linda Darnell lived in a world that wanted her to be spotless, but she chose to be real, and that made her unforgettable. Gloria Swanson. Before Elizabeth Taylor, before Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood had Gloria Swanson, the original queen of excess. As a silent film star, she built a reputation not just for her performances, but for her dazzling lifestyle and her tangled romances. Her most infamous relationship was with Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., patriarch of the Kennedy family. Their affair was public enough to make headlines and private enough to fuel endless speculation. Swanson was painted as the older temptress who nearly derailed a political dynasty. But for Gloria, it was simply another chapter in a life lived at full speed. She had multiple marriages, countless rumored romances, and an image that dripped with luxury. Furs, diamonds, and elegant premieres were her trademark. But behind the glamour was a sharp strategist. Gloria understood that gossip was currency, and she spent it wisely. Every headline, every rumor, every whispered story only added to her mystique. Her career had ups and downs, but she secured immortality with Sunset Boulevard in 1950. Playing Norma Desmond, a faded star clinging to past glory, she blurred the line between fiction and reality. Audiences saw both the character and the woman who had lived it. Gloria Swanson wasn't just a starlet chasing attention, she was a master of turning attention into power. If Hollywood whispered that she climbed her way to the top through romance, she simply smiled, added another diamond to her collection, and posed for the cameras. Swanson showed that in Hollywood, scandal and survival could be two sides of the same coin. Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman shocked the world not because she lived wildly like Clara Bow or Tallulah Bankhead, but because she broke her carefully polished image in the most public way possible. For years, Ingrid was Hollywood's model of grace. She starred in Casablanca, Gaslight, and countless classics, adored by critics and fans alike. She seemed untouchable, but everything changed during the filming of Stromboli in Italy, when she fell in love with director Roberto Rossellini. There was one problem. Both were married at the time. Their affair became international news. Unlike other stars who weathered whispers quietly, Ingrid faced a tidal wave of outrage. American newspapers blasted her, and even U.S. senators condemned her on the Senate floor, calling her immoral. It was a level of backlash almost unheard of for an actress. But Ingrid didn't back down. She divorced, married Rossellini, and had a child with him, despite Hollywood turning its back. For years, she was effectively exiled from American cinema, yet she refused to apologize, refused to hide, and refused to reshape her choices into a safer story. Eventually, her immense talent won out. She returned triumphantly with Anastasia in 1956, winning another Academy Award and reclaiming her throne as one of Hollywood's greatest actresses. Ingrid Bergman's scandal wasn't about wild nights or countless affairs. It was about choosing love in a way that defied the era's moral code. Her resilience redefined what it meant to be a star, not someone who bowed to public opinion, but someone who lived boldly and faced the consequences head-on. Old Hollywood wasn't just about elegance on the screen. It was about personalities too big to be contained, women who lived as loudly as they performed. From glittering affairs to fearless choices, these actresses turned whispers into legend. Which of these stars fascinates you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and spread the story. After all, the legends of old Hollywood never really fade.